This is Salim bin Mohammad Rafi, your host, and here is my YouTube channel, Zamir Universal. One man, but if we go back just in the beginning of the Second World War, a crazy man, a mentally deranged, a maniac, a hater of a specific race and responsible for destroying the world peace and fighting and having his own and other millions of soldiers killed in England, in Eastern Europe, in France, in even Leningrad, was Adolf Hitler, who has now in the history been accused of burning these Jews, separating them, getting their teeth out, having their clothes and women stripped, and then burning them in gas chambers, suffocate and have the most painful death, or put them in the incinerators and burn them so that you can get the ashes of their bones, which the Jews have been saving and getting sympathy from the rest of the world and really fleecing money, billions of dollars, from both the Germans as well as from the Swiss bank where the Hitler had, or Germany had, its bank deposits. Why could the whole world not stop one man? Why could the Europeans, the Germans, the Austrians, why was it that one single man, was allowed to do, if that is a true story in the history, that he did kill millions of Jews, separated them, and it was not in one day's job. Now history repeats itself, and we have a mentally deranged, schizophrenic, megalomaniac, paranoid Netanyahu, another mentally deranged person who has now taken up the stick from Adolf Hitler's hands and is causing the suffering and is now strangulating and pushing from the north to the south, from south to Rafah, and now to 1.9 million people. He wants to bomb them or push them in the Egyptian desert. Why cannot the millions of Jews living in Israel who've been enjoying and as robbers, as stealers of somebody else's money and been living there on their land, eating from that land and drinking that water, going in their bikinis in their beaches, they had enough in 75 years. Why can't one of them, just like a sniper, get rid of this gentleman? And if he doesn't want to do that, if he hasn't got, as they did to Rabin, because he fought for the peace and in Oslo Accord, and he is the one who wanted to live in peace, and he is the one who was awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace, shared with Yasser Arafat. There was one singly mentally deranged person laughing like a donkey who shot him and is still alive and is decorated as a hero because he wanted peace. Even his widow of Rabin, who's now probably a very old lady, and the whole world appreciated a noble Jew who wanted a peace in that region, and by now there would have been two states, and by now they have been living in complete peace and harmony in the world. This deranged, schizophrenic had the courage to go to north of Gaza and walk there and make this declaration that he is going to build his settlements there. How dare you, damn it, you do this thing? when you know yourself that the Arabs will have to commit suicide now. It is not way back when the Arabs were not ready and you send your women to just get rid of the Egyptian Air Force because they just enticed them, and so you like a sitting ducks, you destroyed their all aircrafts, and then you could go and occupy the whole now of good part of Egypt and the Golan Heights and many other areas in Palestine, and you were able to throw them out. And that was the first greatest exodus of the actual owners of Palestinian land. And you are now encouraged with that. And this crocodile tears of women up on the road asking now that he should get your hostages back. On earth, when you're dealing with a mental case, when you're dealing with a madman, he's not interested in you. His own ego won't let him bring your hostages or your loved ones. If you really wanted your loved one back, whether it's your husband, your son, or your daughter, you would have got rid of this mentally deranged man or institutionalized him. I would say the same thing about China and Russia. It is their pussyfooting. It is them who have been giving them false hopes that by someone who is starved and you give them just one tiny morsel and you expect that she is going to be satisfied and have her hunger gone. Both countries, they know that what the Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah, Yemeni, and now Egyptian and Jordanian now require is the best air defense system, S-400, along with the latest jets with bombs, and he lives in a delusion. So it's another one of the stages of schizophrenia is delusional. And this is what this man in his dreams, it daydreams that he has defeated Hamas, and this is what he is doing. You must now, before even one single aircraft drops a single bomb in the 1.5 million starving, dying with their kids, mostly kids and women, give them the latest jets with the most lethal bombs to start, be the aggressor, be the starter of the war first under the umbrella of the United Nations. So call the Emergency Security Council meeting and have the mandate to bomb the whole of Israel and destroy every aircraft and every defense system they have installed anywhere in the whole of Israel. Then and then alone you will see that he will fall with his dirty head on your feet and beg for peace and stop the war, the ceasefire, and then your loved ones will be home back with you and you will be able to live in peace.
Soldier, diplomat, politician, prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu has been called many things in his life. A life of contrasts and contradictions, a life of power and ambition. But who is the real Netanyahu? What does he stand for? What are his beliefs? What is his story? Let's take a look at the making of this leader, his many avatars, many policies, many controversies, and what awaits him. Hello and welcome. You are watching Into the War. Not everything is going as per plan. Scores of hostages are still with Hamas, and anger against Netanyahu is on the rise. The families of the captives are out on the streets. They are demanding Netanyahu's resignation. There is also a global pressure of sorts to make Netanyahu scale down the offensive. Rights bodies are accusing him of facilitating war crimes. Hanging over these accusations is also a cloud of an ongoing criminal trial. Trial for what? For bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. These are the charges Netanyahu fiercely denies. To start with, Netanyahu is accused of accepting gifts worth $300,000 from an Australian billionaire and a producer. The gifts allegedly also included jewelry for Netanyahu's wife, Sarah Netanyahu. The second case concerns a quid pro quo arrangement. Netanyahu is accused of favoring the publisher of an Israeli newspaper. He apparently curbed the powers of a rival publisher and in return got favorable coverage. In the third case, Netanyahu is accused of receiving favors from a telecom mogul in return for a promise that he would not harm his business interests. But these are hardly the only controversies. Throughout his life, Netanyahu has been involved in a spiraling saga of legal troubles, scandals that have plagued the leader's three-decade-long political career. In 1997, his government was hit by an influence peddling scandal. He was accused of appointing an attorney general at the behest of a leader facing criminal charges. In 2016, he was criticized after a state expense report revealed that he spent over $600,000 worth of public funds on a 6-day personal vacation in New York. This included spending $1,600 on a personal hairdresser. And then in 2019, he was questioned in a probe related to a conflict of interest in a case related to the purchase of German submarines by his friends. Netanyahu was accused of helping his friends secure the deal. So in a way, Netanyahu has always been a man at war with his legal troubles, at war over his personal adventurism, and now he is at war against Israel's most sworn enemy, the Hamas. But has a rage-filled Netanyahu walked into Hamas's trap? By going into Gaza, has Netanyahu triggered a cycle of events that could land him deeper into trouble? To start with, it could weaken overseas support for Israel. Secondly, there is no guarantee that Israel's offensive will succeed. History has shown that every time Israel has tried to weaken Hamas's control on Gaza, it has only ended up getting stronger. Will things turn out differently this time? My point is simple. This is going to be a long and bloody war.
آمن ولا في حاجة، الاحتلال جاي قد ما يقدر يقتل في الشعب الفلسطيني، ما في آمن وكله كذب. وإحنا الله وقعنا مع واحد مجرم حرب اسمه نتنياهو، زلمة قاتل أوسخ من النازية. إيش اللي هذا بصير أطفال ينقتلوا بالطريقة هذه تلم لحمهم فتافيت.
Rafah is where Gazans have fled to after several rounds of evacuations, driving them from north to south. It is also the entry point for much-needed relief supplies for Gazans. At this point, Gazans have only one question in mind: where to go now?
إحنا إذا دخلوا رفح ولا ما دخلوا رفح، ملزمين على سلامتنا، يعني نطلع نتوجه على أي مكان آمن بيقولوا لنا إياه، رغم إنه إحنا مقتنعين قناعة تامة إنه هدول لا فيها مكان آمن ولا حاجة، والدليل على ذلك ما شاهدناه في الشمال وفي خان يونس وفي الوسط. بقول لك آمن وفي الطريق بقعد يقصف فيك. فيش مكان آمن مدام في حكومة زي هاد، حكومة نازية، فيش مكان آمن.
Israel says Rafah has become the bastion of Hamas militants. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered his troops to prepare to charge into the city. Plans are being drawn for evacuating civilians from Rafah. This is after a wartime leader rejected Hamas's proposal and insisted on achieving total victory on the militant group.
והערב באתי להגיד לכם דבר אחד: אנחנו בדרך לניצחון מוחלט. הניצחון הוא בהישג יד. זה לא עניין של שנים או עשרות שנים, זה עניין של חודשים.
The conditions are already miserable here. There's panic and fear on the ground.
العملية البرية جاية وحيأخذوا وفزعوا في رفح زي ما فزعوا في الشمال وعملوا كلها مجازر فوق 1000 مجزرة صارت، والعالم مش متحرك ساكن. واخدين ضوء اخضر يعملوا مجازر وحياخذوا رفح ويسووا اللي بدهم اياه، ومحدش حيقول لهم ايش بتساوي. يعني احنا ضحية العالم كله، والعالم لليوم ما صحيش ينصفنا ويعطينا حدود.
Netanyahu's decision has drawn condemnation from Western leaders. Washington says it will not back Israel's Rafah offensive, while adding that the step could be a disaster. United Nations chief says the operation could exponentially increase the humanitarian nightmare unfolding in Gaza. Saudi Arabia has also warned of a humanitarian catastrophe. Day by day, pressure is mounting on the Israeli Prime Minister, but he remains adamant, and his stance is seemingly hurting Israel. Ratings agency Moody's downgraded the country's credit rating. This is for the first time Israel has to face the ignominy.
Any move by the Zionist regime for a large-scale attack on Lebanon will spill the end of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the end of the current situation in the region.
Furthermore, Iranian Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian said that Iran and the United States have exchanged messages throughout Israel's 4-month-old war on Hamas in Gaza, including about Lebanese armed group Hezbollah.
Well, there is anger on the streets of Israel as frustrated demonstrators call on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do more to get the hostages out of Gaza. In Israel, Tel Aviv and nearby towns were rocked by massive demonstrations where people in thousands hit the streets. They voiced their demands of fresh deal for hostage release and Netanyahu's ouster from the office.
על איזו אחדות אתם מעזים לדבר? אם אין שיח על עמק השווה. צבא העם. המושג הזה נכבד ומאבד.
A separate demonstration by hundreds of Israelis was staged against the government at Tel Aviv's Habima Square and outside the Israeli Defense Ministry compound. The demonstrators also sang the national anthem at the Habima Square.
Came here tonight to keep fighting for the release of my brother and the rest of 135 hostages. Like every Saturday, like every day, we want them back. My brother has a 2-year-old son who lost his mother and is waiting for a hug from his father for 127 days.
Most of us here at Hostage Square just want a hostage deal. We want our people to come home. We feel that no price is too high.
Meanwhile, in the Israeli town of Qasera, hundreds of demonstrators marched towards Prime Minister Netanyahu's private residence. They shouted slogans calling for Netanyahu's resignation. Some also carried a banner that read, and I'm quoting here, "The guilty one is here." In Kafr Saba, thousands gathered and demonstrated against what they called Prime Minister Netanyahu's governance failure in bringing the hostages home. The chorus for Prime Minister Netanyahu's ouster and fresh elections is growing across Israel as the war has been continuing for more than 120 days, with no signs of mediation or a new hostage deal since the temporary truce that took place in November last year. According to the Israeli authorities, more than 100 hostages are still under the Hamas's captivity. While Gaza's health ministry says over 28,000 Palestinians have been killed, including children and women, due to the full-scale war between the Israeli armed forces and... A separate protest by hundreds of Israelis was staged against the government at Tel Aviv's Habima Square and outside the Israeli Defense Ministry compound. The demonstrators also sang the national anthem at the Habima Square.
Came here tonight to keep fighting for the release of my brother and the rest of 135 hostages. Like every Saturday, like every day, we want them back. My brother has a 2-year-old son who lost his mother and is waiting for a hug from his father for 127 days.
In the Israeli town,
just want a hostage deal. We want our people to come home. We feel that no price is too high.
in the Israeli town of Caesarea, hundreds of demonstrators marched towards Prime Minister Netanyahu's private residence. They shouted slogans calling for Netanyahu's resignation. Some also carried a banner that read, "The guilty one is in Caesarea." In Kafr Saba, thousands gathered and protested against what they called Prime Minister Netanyahu's governance failure in bringing the hostages home. The chorus for Prime Minister Netanyahu's ouster and fresh elections is growing across Israel as the war has been continuing for more than 120 days, with no signs of mediation or a new hostage deal since the temporary truce that took place in November last year. According to the Israeli authorities, more than 100 hostages are still under Hamas's captivity, while Gaza's health ministry says over 28,000 Palestinians have been killed, including children and women, due to the full-scale war between the Israeli armed forces and the Hamas militants.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर